The jungle moon of Sarka 7 was a hellish landscape of dense foliage, toxic air, and predators lurking in every shadow. The Galactic Empire's patrol drones swept the area with unerring precision, scanning for heat signatures and anomalous movement. The planet's oppressive heat made even the drones falter, their cooling systems pushed to the brink. But one anomaly caught their attention. A faint but distinct humanoid figure darting through the underbrush. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Reaper. Kane moved with the precision and silence of a predator. Clad in tactical gear modified for off-world operations, he blended seamlessly with the shadows. His mission was clear: infiltrate the Empire's outpost, gather intelligence on their new plasma weapons, and exfiltrate without detection. The mission was routine for a Navy SEAL of his caliber. At least, it should have been. Jack crouched behind a massive tree with bark as hard as steel, his breathing controlled, his mind focused. Through his night vision goggles, he saw the patrol drones inch closer. He calculated their pattern, waited for the right moment, and moved. His steps were soundless, his body low to the ground. But even the best plans can falter. A stray beam of moonlight reflected off a metal clasp on his harness, and the drone sensors zeroed in on him instantly. The air exploded with plasma fire, blue streaks of energy searing through the jungle. Jack rolled to the side, his training taking over. He returned fire with his silenced rifle, the muted pops barely audible over the chaos. 2 drones went down in a fiery burst, but the noise had alerted the outpost. Imperial troops, tall, armored beings with glowing visors, emerged from the jungle. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, and their voices barked commands in a guttural alien language. Jack's mind raced. He'd faced impossible odds before, and every time, he'd come out on top. This time would be no different. He switched to his sidearm, a compact but powerful energy pistol, and aimed for the soldiers' weak points. Their armor was strong, but their visors were vulnerable. Jack's shots were precise, each one finding its mark. Alien after alien fell, their bodies collapsing in eerie silence. But the Empire had numbers on its side. For every soldier Jack took down, 3 more appeared. The jungle became a war zone, plasma bolts lighting up the darkness in brilliant flashes. Jack's movements were a blur as he ducked, dodged, and counterattacked. He used the terrain to his advantage, setting traps with grenades and leading the soldiers into ambushes. Still, the sheer volume of enemy forces was overwhelming. A sharp pain seared through Jack's side as a plasma bolt grazed him. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the burning sensation. Blood soaked his uniform, but he pushed forward. He reached for his emergency beacon, a small device that could signal for extraction. Just as he activated it, a stun blast hit him square in the chest. The world tilted and Jack's vision blurred. He collapsed to the ground, his body convulsing as the stun energy coursed through him. He tried to move, but his limbs refused to obey. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the towering figure of an Imperial officer standing over him, its glowing eyes filled with triumph. Jack woke to the cold, sterile confines of a detention cell aboard the Imperial prison ship Malekith. His head throbbed, and his muscles felt like lead. He was restrained in a gravity field, his arms and legs immobilized. The room was dimly lit, the walls lined with alien runes that pulsed faintly. A single camera watched him from the corner, its lens unblinking. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself. Panic was the enemy. He'd been trained to resist capture, to endure interrogation, and to escape any confinement. He mentally cataloged his injuries. A plasma burn on his side, bruised ribs, and a splitting headache. Nothing he couldn't handle. The door to his cell slid open with a hiss, and 2 alien guards entered, their weapons trained on him. Behind them stood Commander X Wylor, a reptilian officer with scales that shimmered in shades of green and gold. The commander was tall and imposing, his yellow eyes studying Jack with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "So, this is the infamous human," X Wylor said, his voice a deep rumble. "The one who caused so much trouble on Sarkop 7. I must admit, I expected more. Jack met the commander's gaze, his expression unreadable. And I expected better security, he replied coolly. Ex-Swilor's lips curled into what might have been a smile. Bold words for a prisoner. Tell me, human, what were you doing on our moon? Bird watching, Jack said with a smirk. The guards growled, their weapons humming with energy, but Ex-Swilor raised a hand to stop them. You're amusing, I'll give you that, but your humor won't save you. The Empire has ways of extracting information, ways that even your primitive mind cannot resist. Jack leaned back, his calm demeanor unwavering. Go ahead and try, but I'll warn you, you won't like what you find. The commander's eyes narrowed. We shall see. He turned to the guards. Prepare him for interrogation. I want to know everything about his mission, his allies, and his home world. As the guards moved to restrain him further, Jack's mind was already working. He'd let them think they had the upper hand. For now. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Jack Kane wasn't just any soldier. He was a Navy SEAL, and he'd been in tighter spots than this. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake. And soon, they would learn just how dangerous a single determined human could be. Jack Kane had faced some of the most grueling training the world could offer, from underwater demolitions to Arctic survival. Nothing, however, had quite prepared him for the sensory onslaught of the Galactic Empire's interrogation chamber. Suspended in midair by a glowing containment field, Jack's body was held taut, his limbs spread as if crucified. The room was awash in harsh, flickering light, and an unrelenting hum reverberated in his skull. Alien symbols lined the walls, pulsing rhythmically like the heartbeat of some malevolent entity. Commander Ex-Swilor circled him, hands clasped behind his back, his reptilian features calm and inscrutable. Two more guards stood silently at the edges of the room, their weapons ready, though unnecessary. Jack's body was immobilized, but his mind remained razor-sharp. Do you understand where you are, human? Ex-Swilor's voice was low, a rumble that seemed to vibrate in Jack's bones. Jack smirked despite the pain from the containment field. Can't say I've had the pleasure of a formal tour. Care to enlighten me? Ex-Swilor leaned closer, his slit-pupil eyes narrowing. This is no place for games. You are aboard the Malekith, one of the Empire's most secure detention vessels. No one escapes. No one resists. And no one, he paused, his gaze piercing, survives defiance. Jack shrugged as best he could within the restraints. Guess there's a first time for everything. The commander's lips curled into a snarl. He gestured to a console, and one of the guards activated a switch. Pain exploded through Jack's body as the containment field intensified, sending waves of energy coursing through his nerves. Every muscle screamed in agony, but Jack refused to give them the satisfaction of hearing him cry out. Instead, he bit down hard, the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. Impressive, Ex-Swilor admitted, his tone almost begrudging. Your resilience is commendable, but it will not last. The Empire's methods are thorough. Jack's vision swam, but he focused on the commander's face. Thorough, huh? Is that what you call stumbling around in the dark? Ex-Swilor raised a scaly brow. And what makes you think we are unprepared? Because, Jack said, his voice strained but steady, if you really knew what I'm capable of, you'd have killed me already. The commander's gaze hardened. He stepped back and barked an order in an alien tongue. The guards moved to another console, their hands flying over the controls. The room shifted, the containment field altering its energy signature. Jack's mind was bombarded with disorienting visions, flashes of his past, twisted and distorted. Images of his SEAL training, his family, and his missions blended together in a chaotic montage. The Empire's technology was attempting to break into his psyche, to extract his memories by force. But Jack was no ordinary soldier. Years of mental conditioning and resistance training had prepared him for psychological warfare. He focused on his breathing, grounding himself amidst the storm of images. He compartmentalized his thoughts, shielding his most critical memories behind mental barriers. The Empire might access fragments, but they'd never get the full picture. Commander Xylor watched intently, his expression a mix of frustration and intrigue. "Fascinating," he muttered. "Your mind resists even our most advanced techniques. Tell me, human, what drives you to such defiance? What makes your kind so stubborn?" Jack met Xylor's gaze, his eyes blazing with determination. "It's simple," he said. "You can't break what's already unbreakable." The interrogation continued for hours, each session more intense than the last. The Empire deployed every tool at its disposal. Pain stimulators, neural disruptors, even truth-inducing serums derived from alien flora. But Jack endured it all, his will unyielding. Between sessions, he used every moment of solitude to assess his surroundings. The containment field's energy patterns, the guards' routines, the placement of surveillance devices. Jack absorbed every detail. He knew that escape was not a matter of if, but when. The Empire had underestimated him, and that mistake would cost him dearly. Jack Kane had spent the better part of his military career studying systems, exploiting weaknesses, and adapting to hostile environments. The Galactic Empire's prison ship Malekith might have been a fortress to them, but to him, it was just another challenge. As he endured their relentless interrogation sessions, he had meticulously gathered intelligence. Every flicker in the containment field, every rotation of the guards, every flick of Commander Xylor's eyes, it all painted a picture of opportunity. After hours of torment, Jack was returned to his cell. His body ached, his vision swam, and his mind buzzed from the neural disruptors. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a quiet confidence grew. The Empire had failed to break him, and now it was his turn. The cell door slid shut with a hiss, and the gravity restraints deactivated, dropping him unceremoniously onto the cold, metallic floor. Jack took a moment to steady himself, his breathing slow and deliberate. He needed to conserve energy. Rolling onto his back, he stared at the ceiling, watching the faint pulses of alien runes. The rhythm of their glow was erratic, as if they were tied to the ship's power grid. A grin tugged at the corner of his lips. He'd found his first weakness. Jack had timed the guard's patrol pattern during his transfer. They passed the cell every 7 minutes, pausing briefly to check their monitors. That left him a narrow window to act. He reached into the seam of his uniform, where he'd hidden a sliver of metal pride from the interrogation table. It was crude, but it would do. Carefully, Jack approached the cell's control panel. The alien technology was complex, but patterns were universal. A keypad here, a locking mechanism there. He just needed to disable the system without triggering an alarm. His fingers moved deftly, bypassing circuits and rerouting energy flows. Sparks flew, and the door's locking mechanism gave a low hum before disengaging. The door slid open an inch. Jack pressed himself against the wall, listening for footsteps. When the guard's heavy boots echoed down the corridor, he waited until they reached the far end before slipping out. He moved silently, staying low and hugging the shadows. Every movement was calculated, every sound analyzed. He was in their domain, but he was a predator in unfamiliar territory, and predators thrived on the element of surprise. Runes. Jack relied on his military instincts and visual memory to navigate. He'd studied the guards' paths during his transfers and pieced together a mental map of the ship. His first objective, retrieve his gear. Without his weapons and tools, his chances of survival were slim. The armory was heavily guarded. 2 sentries stood at the entrance, their plasma rifles cradled in their arms. Jack watched from a ventilation shaft above, analyzing their movements. Their stances were rigid, their eyes scanning the corridor with mechanical precision. But they weren't invincible. Jack dropped silently behind them, his feet making no more noise than a whisper. Before the guards could react, he struck. A swift chop to the first neck and a disabling blow to the second's visor. Both crumpled to the ground unconscious. Inside the armory, Jack's gear was stored alongside an arsenal of alien weaponry. His tactical vest, modified rifle, and energy pistol were intact, a testament to the Empire's arrogance. They'd underestimated him, and now they'd pay the price. He also grabbed a few alien grenades, their glowing cores promising devastating results. Jack's next target was the engine room. The ship's power grid was its lifeblood, and disrupting it would sow chaos. As he moved through the ship, he encountered more guards. Each encounter was a testament to his training. He used stealth and precision to neutralize threats, conserving ammunition and avoiding unnecessary confrontations. When he had to engage, his strikes were lethal and efficient. The engine room was a sprawling chamber filled with towering reactors and glowing conduits. The hum of machinery was deafening, but Jack's focus was unshakable. He identified the main power relay, a massive console pulsating with energy. It was heavily protected by force fields, but Jack had noticed something during his interrogation. The Empire's technology was vulnerable to power surges. He set one of the alien grenades against a secondary conduit, its timer ticking down. The explosion was spectacular, a cascade of energy that overloaded the force fields and left the relay exposed. Jack moved quickly, planting charges around the reactors. With the timer set, he slipped away, his escape timed perfectly to the escalating alarms. Voices shouted orders. Jack used the confusion to his advantage, slipping through the chaos like a ghost. His goal was the hangar bay, where the ship's shuttles were docked. Escape was within reach, but the Empire wouldn't let him go without a fight. Commander Xylor was waiting for him. The reptilian officer stood at the center of the hangar, flanked by an elite squad of guards. Xylor's eyes burned with fury, his voice a venomous growl. "Did you really think you could escape, human? This ship is my domain." Jack stepped forward, his rifle at the ready. "Funny, I was just about to ask if you were ready to surrender." Xylor bared his teeth. "You are a fool to challenge the Empire. Your defiance ends here." The hangar erupted into chaos. Jack's movements were a blur as he engaged the guards, his shots precise and deadly. Plasma bolts filled the air, and explosions rocked the hangar as Jack used the alien grenades to disable the shuttles, preventing pursuit. Xylor joined the fray, his weapon a massive energy blade that crackled with power. The two clashed, their fight a brutal dance of skill and ferocity. Xylor was strong and relentless, but Jack's training and ingenuity gave him the edge. Using the environment to his advantage, Jack lured Xylor into a vulnerable position. With a well-placed shot, he disabled the commander's blade and knocked him to the ground. Jack leaned over Xylor, his expression cold. "You made a mistake capturing me. Tell your Empire, Earth doesn't fall. We rise." He turned and boarded one of the remaining shuttles, its systems familiar enough to pilot. As the hangar bay doors opened, Jack launched the shuttle into the void. Behind him, the Malekith burned, its systems crippled by the charges he'd planted. The Galactic Empire had suffered a humiliating defeat, and Jack Kane was free. As the shuttle disappeared into the vastness of space, Jack allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The mission had gone sideways, but he'd survived. More than that, he'd sent a message to the Empire. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Jack activated the shuttle's navigation system, plotting a course back to Earth. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, he'd won, and as long as he drew breath, the Empire would learn the true meaning of resilience. The Malekith shuddered under the impact of an explosion. Alarms blared throughout the ship, their shrill cries echoing in the metallic corridors. Jack Kane, now free of his restraints, moved like a shadow through the chaos, a stolen plasma rifle clutched tightly in his hands. His escape had been methodical, a combination of calculated risk and pure SEAL ingenuity. Every detail he had observed during his confinement had come together like pieces of a puzzle, culminating in a jailbreak the Galactic Empire would not soon forget. Jack's mind was focused on one objective: survival. He knew the odds of reaching the surface of Sarka 7 were slim, but he'd faced worse odds before. The Empire's ship was vast, a labyrinth of steel and energy conduits, but Jack had memorized key routes from his earlier observations. Each step he took was purposeful, every turn calculated. The guards who dared to stand in his way were dispatched with ruthless efficiency. A quick strike here, a precise shot there. Jack was a storm the Empire couldn't contain. As he rounded a corner, Jack encountered a squad of Imperial soldiers. Their glowing visors lit up the corridor, their plasma weapons trained on him. Without hesitation, Jack dove for cover, rolling into a maintenance alcove as bolts of energy scorched the air around him. He returned fire, his stolen rifle humming with power. The confined space amplified the sounds of battle, each shot echoing like thunder. The soldiers moved with discipline, coordinating their assault with precision. But Jack was no ordinary combatant. Years of SEAL training had honed his reflexes and instincts to near superhuman levels. He used the environment to his advantage, bouncing plasma bolts off reflective surfaces and setting off small explosions by targeting exposed energy conduits. Within minutes, the squad lay defeated, their bodies strewn across the corridor. Jack paused to catch his breath, his chest heaving. He'd sustained a few minor injuries. A graze along his shoulder, a burn on his calf, but adrenaline kept the pain at bay. He scavenged what he could from the fallen soldiers. A few energy cells, a tactical scanner, and a handheld device that appeared to control access to the ship systems. The device could prove invaluable. "All right," Jack muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of the ship's engines. "Let's see what you can do." Activating the device, he was greeted by a series of holographic displays, each one written in the alien script of the Galactic Empire. Jack's linguistic training kicked in, his brain quickly deciphering the symbols. The device provided access to schematics of the Malekith, as well as control over certain systems. Jack grinned. He now had a map and the means to manipulate his environment. He used the device to disable nearby surveillance cameras and lock down several sections of the ship, creating a controlled path toward the hangar bay. The Malekith was equipped with a fleet of small fighter craft, and Jack intended to commandeer one. It was a risky plan, but it was his best shot at escaping the Empire's clutches. Meanwhile, Commander Xylor stood on the ship's bridge, his claws gripping the edge of a holographic console. The reptilian officer's normally composed demeanor had given way to frustration. Reports of Jack's escape and the ensuing chaos flooded in from every deck. "How is this possible?" Xylor growled, his yellow eyes narrowing. "One human cannot outwit an entire Imperial vessel." A junior officer hesitated before responding. "Commander, the prisoner's actions are unprecedented. He has disabled multiple systems and eliminated several squads. Our forces are unable to contain him." Xylor slammed a clawed fist against the console, the impact sending a tremor through the bridge. "Divert all available units to the hangar bay. Seal off the area and ensure he does not escape. If necessary, destroy the entire hangar." "Yes, Commander," the officer replied, hastily issuing the orders. Xylor stared at the tactical display, watching as the human's position advanced toward the hangar. A cold realization settled over him. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a predator, a force of nature. And the Empire had underestimated him. Reveal a battalion of Imperial troops waiting for him. Dozens of glowing visors turned in unison, their weapons aimed and ready. Jack cursed under his breath. He had expected resistance, but not on this scale. He activated the tactical scanner he'd taken from the earlier squad, analyzing the layout of the hangar. Several fighter craft were docked along the walls, their sleek frames gleaming under the harsh lights. Energy barriers protected the exterior openings, but those could be overridden with the device he'd acquired. The challenge was getting to the nearest fighter without being vaporized. Jack's mind raced. He spotted a stack of energy crates near the center of the hangar. A well-placed shot could trigger an explosion, creating the distraction he needed. He took aim with his plasma rifle, exhaled slowly, and fired. The resulting blast was deafening, a chain reaction of fiery eruptions that sent shockwaves through the hangar. Imperial soldiers were thrown off their feet, their formations shattered. Smoke and debris filled the air, creating a chaotic battlefield. Jack seized the moment, sprinting toward the nearest fighter craft. He reached the craft's access hatch and quickly input a series of commands on the control panel. The hatch hissed open, and Jack climbed inside, his movements swift and practiced. The cockpit's controls were unfamiliar, but Jack's training in piloting various vehicles gave him a foundation to work from. He activated the fighter systems, the engines roaring to life. "All units, fire on that craft," Ex-Swilor's voice bellowed over the hangar's intercom. Plasma bolts rained down on the fighter as Jack struggled to lift off. Shields flared under the assault, the craft's hull groaning in protest. Jack gritted his teeth, his hands flying over the controls. He deactivated the energy barriers protecting the hangar's exit, then slammed the throttle forward. The fighter shot out of the hangar like a comet, leaving a trail of fire and destruction in its wake. The black void of space stretched out before him, dotted with the cold light of distant stars. Jack's stolen fighter weaved through the debris field surrounding the Malekith, evading pursuit from Imperial ships. The vessel's controls were becoming more intuitive with each passing moment, and Jack pushed the craft to its limits. But the Empire was not so easily deterred. A squadron of interceptors closed in on him, their weapons blazing. Jack executed a series of daring maneuvers, barrel rolling through narrow gaps and using the debris as cover. His reflexes were razor-sharp, every decision made in fractions of a second. He activated the fighter's weapon systems, returning fire with deadly accuracy. One by one, the interceptors were destroyed, their wreckage spiraling into the void. Jack's heart pounded, but he remained focused. He couldn't celebrate yet. His escape was far from guaranteed. As he approached Sarka 7's atmosphere, Jack initiated the fighter's stealth systems, hoping to evade detection. The planet's surface loomed ahead, a swirling mix of green and brown. Jack guided the craft through the atmosphere, the heat of re-entry causing the hull to glow.